Just a quick video with some Mandela effects I've seen lately. I've actually seen a lot, and this video only contains a few. Some of them other people have shown, so I'm not going to try to redo those. But look at the shape of India. It is bizarre. It's totally changed. India never had that other section. It's almost like a whole nother country added onto India. India was never like that before. It didn't have a giant other country section attached to it by a little I don't know what that is, like a little tiny land strip. So that's definitely changed for me, definitely. Here's another one. So Beavis and Butthead in my life never had a dash in the butthead. I didn't like this show. I hated the way it stereotypes. But my friend from high school, my best friend, loved it. And I ended up watching it kind of a lot. And from what I remember, Butthead never had a dash in the middle of the name at all. So if you can let me know what you remember about that in the comments, I'd appreciate it. And about India. This one, Crybaby, was one that I am not as sure on, but from my memory, the Crybaby never had a hyphen in it. It was just Crybaby, like the baby was down below a little bit from the cry. And it was like a little bit unsure if it was the same word or separated, like two words, cry and baby. If you look it up on Google, most people are spelling it without the hyphen or just cry and baby as two separate words. So the hyphen is new to me. I didn't remember the hyphen. It jumped out at me. And what I've been noticing lately about Mandela Effects is if something jumps out at me, like the Dukes of Hazzard having two Z's in it, even if I didn't watch that show, it jumped out at me, and then I looked it up, and other people are noticing it as a Mandela effect. The same way for Spider-Man. Spider-Man definitely jumped out at me. I know for a fact Spider-Man never had a hyphen in the middle between Spider and Man. It was just one word. And then I noticed something else weird. I only remember one mission to the moon that had people that actually landed on the moon. In fact, that was one of the very reasons why conspiracy theorists were going wild, saying that it was faked because we'd only been there once, and with all of our greater technology, we'd never been back. No, we'd never been back to the moon, but suddenly there's been 9-person missions to the moon, and 6 of them actually landed. So 6 times astronauts landed on the moon? No, that's not what I remember at all. And so to test this, I texted somebody and just asked, without even looking it up, please just tell me how many missions there were to the moon. And he said 1. And then he said maybe 2. And he was like, no, those were like robots, so only 1. And that's what I remember. So please let me know if that's what you remember too or not. Here's another one for me. I remember John Lennon being shot in 1979. I was only 4 or 5 when this happened, so obviously I couldn't remember clearly, but I became a fan about 10 years later when I would read the back of the record covers of my mom's collection. And I distinctly remember it being in 1979. Now, I did find people online debating this, but they're not debating the 79-80. They're debating the December 7th or December 8th. But they are debating the date of his death. So there is some contention on his death date. I recall it being 79, but I'm starting to understand that maybe some of my Mandela effects, I'm just coming from a completely different reality or I may be remembering it wrong, but please let me know what you think in the comments. I do know that some of my memories are things nobody else has. For instance, I remember a cannibalism scene in The Dark Crystal. I recall a human skeleton totally roasted and its ribs out just like any other animal's ribs, and they were about to eat it. And nobody else remembers this but me. So you could maybe convince me that it was a dream or something like that, but maybe another movie. But this is what I recall. I recall seeing it in The Dark Crystal. I always kind of hated that movie afterwards because it was just a little too gory for me, and nobody else I know remembers the cannibalism scene in this movie. So if you do, please let me know, because apparently if it was there and it's not just a dream of mine or something that's so vivid that it was in that movie, maybe I'm coming from a completely different timeline than everyone else here, which would be a little lonely, but I've accepted it. Now, this one really freaked me out. This is a shot from All the Single Ladies by Beyonce. What I recall is I thought this was TLC. I'm telling you, I never thought I had ever heard a Beyonce song in my entire life. And suddenly, one of my favorite songs from back then was done by Beyonce. It didn't even make sense. I liked TLC. And I recall the video was, it was the three ladies, but they were more like in color. Like they had colored costumes. They were standing, stepping up and down on like a little step on a white stage. And it was very much like the Beyonce video, but more colorful. And I'm not sure I know much about Beyonce, but since when does she have three girls in it, like just like TLC? And then the other weirdest part was I watched this video and I was like, no way. There's no way in heck there was a cyborg claw in this music video. At that time period, that would have been so freaking weird. Now, it's totally normal for people to see transhumanism bumps and or whatever you call it, like when they're promoting it. It's totally normal to see cyborg things and robotics and all kinds of stuff. But back then, it wasn't that normal to see something, and it looks just so high tech. The video looks amazing. It looks like a video from our time period. It doesn't really look like the cheesy-ish animation of that time period, which it was a little bit more cheesy if you look back at like the old Terminator movies and stuff. Sure, they had robotic hands, but it just wasn't so shiny and crisp like this. And the robot hand, the cyborg hand, doesn't even fit in this video. There's no point to it. I remember at the ending, she was holding up her hand with the ring, and it was just a ring on a hand. The cyborg hand is totally new to me. So please let me know if that one's new to you or not too. I don't want to go too crazy on this one, and this is the last one, but I woke up one morning with this song in my head, Video Killed the Radio Star. Now, when I was a kid, I loved this song and used to play over and over in my head, and I spent quite a long time trying to figure out the lyrics, and I couldn't figure out the lyrics. I did not understand them. I think that's why it bugged me. It just stuck in my head. Now, all the lyrics make total sense, and I think that's what's so strange about it. You can see this song was made in 1979. Video Killed the Radio Star. It's like a prophetic song. It's a prophecy song. Video Killed the Radio Star actually happened. At the time it didn't make sense, but now it does. What happened? Internet came, YouTube came, and video came and killed the radio star, meaning the radio people and that huge industry that was all the radio, and even the CDs are gone now. It all collapsed and video took over. So I thought that was interesting. I started looking it up and found some very interesting things about the lyrics. First of all, just check this out. There's a star in the video, like the star of Venus, and they're talking about a star, a video star, someone who's a star on video. And you can see the star of Venus here in his eyeglasses because Venus is actually appears as two stars, but is actually one star because it's the morning star and the evening star. It rises once in the morning and once at evening. So it looks like two stars, but it's actually one. So I thought that was interesting. I wondered if they were referring to Venus. Now check out these lyrics. Okay, so it sounds like time travel to me. I heard you back on the wireless in 52. Wireless? Internet in 1952? Okay. Lying awake, intent at tuning in on you. If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through. Meaning somebody was laying there in 1952, tuning in on their wireless internet or wireless cell phone or whatever it was, wireless, tuning in on someone who was a star on the videos. Meaning, but the videos didn't come till later, so possibly tuning into the future. It says, they took credit for your second symphony, rewritten by machine on new technology, and now I understand the problems you can see. Again, sounding like a time traveler, meaning, you know, in the future, they took credit for something this person did, rewritten by machine on new technology, and this person is now back in 1952, suddenly understanding all the problems that this video star has been talking about. But it's new to them. Now I understand the problems you can see. I met your children. Really? Okay. You know, was that in the future or back in the past? or what. To me, it just sounds like a time travel song from a time traveler. And then it says, video killed the radio star, video killed the radio star, which I just discussed is about, in my opinion, it's about how the internet and all the videos killed off the radio industry. And yeah, somebody who should have been a radio star or was going to be a radio star, or a radio star who got destroyed by the media and the YouTube and the internet and all that kind of stuff. Pictures came and broke your heart. Possibly pictures from the media and the videos. Okay, so then we get to, I really want to go over this one part about the wireless. So I was freaking out over the wireless back in 52 because, as far as I recall, wireless did not happen in 1952. Okay, pagers and stuff, they didn't come out until the 80s, and people didn't even know the word wireless until like 2000s. It wasn't even a term back then, like not even the 80s or the 90s. And my brother, by the way, was a really, really smart guy who all the computer industries really, really wanted him. They were competing for him to be on their team. And he was one of the guys who was building the internet. Now, I mean, he was building some of the first computers, and he was the one that he actually came to our house and he built us a computer by scratch, by hand. And all it did was ran Zork, and it was an awesome thing. It was just this big box with all these little things in it, and it would go, wah, 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 and it would think for a really long time. You would say, go north. It would think for like 5-10 seconds, and then it would spit out a few lines. The machine ran on DOS only, and it spelled out a few things on the screen of what you were looking at. You are now looking at a forest. Okay, I had one of the first computers. My brother built it for me, and he was working on those computers, and what happened back then was Bill Gates and his team was developing the internet. Well, that's not the case in this dimension. Bill Gates didn't, and his team did not create the internet. It was somebody else. I'm not sure who it was, but now it was no longer Bill Gates. And all of that happened for me back in the late 80s. And yeah, it was the 80s and early 90s. So that's when the internet and the computers were first being born and even being developed. But check this out. Okay, so now they're claiming that wireless pagers were actually developed in the 1950s and 1960s, and the internet was developed in the 1960s. Well, this is news to me. This is like decades before I knew of it being born, and I was there with my brother, who was part of the whole thing and built me that first little computer. And I recall it was the software companies, Bill Gates and those companies, who were developing files to go into the computers that learned that they could be linked together, which is what the internet is. I mean, other than what it physically is, which is a series of on and off electrical bleeps like binary code. But the actual software was developed by the software companies, and linking and sharing files was a part of the software development companies, in other words, Microsoft and Bill Gates, and it didn't happen in the 1950s. All right, so that was a giant Mandela effect I found from that song. So I don't know if it was time travel, Mandela effect, or what, you can decide, or just something that they're lying to us on again. And just to sign off, again, I want to reiterate that Shirley Temple died for me when she was 11, then suddenly came back to life, and the Addams family only had one D, that's for certain, not two. All right, over and out, bye.